USC will host Washington. I have some bad news, people. I played USC.
So did I.
I went back to my roots last week, and we back to the USC fade train, and it worked. They almost lost. I swore them off. All I've been doing is fading them. I remember our USC caller, but I'm going back to them here. Played 3.5, would still play +3. So when I break this game down, there's a couple things that I see. I mean, look, the Washington offense, which isn't in the best rhythm right now. You have injuries to McMillan, a couple other receivers, so you just have your two stud receivers on the outside, Penix, but there's just holes in this offense. You can't run the ball at all. I mean, you're talking 13 carries for 13 yards against Arizona State, 30 carries for 90 yards against Stanford's run D. Can't run it. They don't really run it anyway, but when they try, they can't. Interior offensive line, major issues. So you can, get pressure up the middle, throw off that offense, and they can't run it. So the USC defense, it's a decent enough secondary. And they have some pass rushers. They can't stop the run at all. They can't tackle. It's a horrendous run day. When Washington hasn't been able to run it against anybody, not even Stanford, and they don't run it. So it's not the worst matchup for the USC D. Is Washington going to score a lot? Yes. The total is 78. Of course. It's the USC defense. Washington's going to put up a share of points. But the USC might be able to get a couple sacks or just in coverage, a couple tips, and this Washington offense hasn't been in great rhythm. My biggest concern for Washington is on the other side of the ball in defense. This defense, the difference between Washington and some of the other elite programs, they don't have depth on defense. And one of their best defensive linemen, Tooley, he's been out for a month. We'll see if he goes. Most importantly, they lost a trio of safeties. Asa Turner, I've mentioned them in the past. Cam Fab and Vince Nunnally, I don't know if any of them are going to go. And once you're starting to get down to, your third and fourth string safety on the other side of Dom Hampton, who's not great in coverage, it's dicey. And the defense has really suffered. You saw it last week. They allowed 500 yards to Stanford. They could have lost that game. Week before, they should have lost to Arizona State if Arizona State had a kicker. Should have lost to Oregon, gave up 600 yards. If not for Oregon going 0 for 3 on fourth down. What is the narrative if Washington lost that game? They lost Arizona State as they should have. I mean, this line, it's just crazy to me. This bend don't break Washington defense with these injuries. It's just sent this unit into a tailspin. USC still, by most metrics, is the number one offense in the country. They should score at will. So there's just no reason why both these teams can't match all night. So I'm going to take the 3.5 with the home team. And I think USC might actually be able to get a couple stops because Washington can't run it. And they don't really try to run it. So, and this is what the Pac-12 does. It cannibalizes itself. So it's time for Washington to go to sleep. I think the Trojans win, sadly. We're back and fight on. You agree?
I bet it with you. I'm there. I'm ashamed of myself. I don't really want to give Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams a whole bunch of love after
this better win because the voicemails will be
listen,
bad.
We're going Trojans. So I went on this little 2 or 3 hour fact-finding trip to find out what the hell's going on with Washington and their offense. Why are they struggling against teams they should not be struggling against? So let's look at what's happened to Washington recently. Oregon runs a 3-3-5. They switch to a 2-4-5, cover one quarters. Washington only gets 2 methodicals, but they're full of explosive drives. The problem is they allowed Oregon 70% available yards. They were able to do whatever they wanted. Now we get into 2 teams they should handily beat, right? They go up against Arizona State, who's running, again, flips into a 2-4-5, runs cover 3, cover 1. Have no explosive drives. Washington has no explosive drives. They record 1 methodical. They have 4 turnovers, and their average distance to go on third downs is 8.1 yards. Why? Because they refuse to run the ball against a 2-man front. Shocking. Stanford, what do they run? A 2-4-5 with quarters and cover 3. Washington logs 0 methodicals, 3 explosive drives. They allowed Stanford 5 points per trip past the 40-yard line. So what is the moral takeaway from all of that? Teams are going 2-4-5, showing 2 down linemen, 9 guys in the back, and daring Washington to run, and they won't run. And the thing is Washington, their methodicals are gone. No more methodical drives. That is a drive that has 10 plays, at least 10 plays. They are 8th nationally in quality drives. It's the same thing. Quality, methodical drive, whatever. It's the same thing. They're 8th. You know how many methodical drives they've had in the last 2 weeks against Arizona State and Stanford? 1. You've had 24 possessions and you've had 1 methodical drive and you're top 10 in the nation. Teams are, I mean, I've heard of loading the box. This is the opposite of loading the box. And Washington just doesn't care. We're just going to keep throwing into it. So
yep. And then on third and longs, teams are bringing pressure up the middle because their interior offensive line has been so bad. And that's hard to sustain. And then you see the depth because they also miss McMillan now, like giving them the 300 monster. It's just hard to, 2 things. It's hard to keep getting third and longs. And then if they get down to the red zone, there's going to be more issues now because you can't run it. You're in third and long. So that's USC's path, I think. Like a couple third and longs, you either get pressure, you break up a pass, and then in the red zone, you force a couple field goals. It's not going to take many stops or different. It just might be a couple field goals to win this game. Like that's it. Like both these offenses should move the ball.
Yeah. I mean, I went and looked at USC's personnel on defense. Wouldn't you know it? They run a pretty heavy amount of 2-3-6 and 2-4-5 personnel. That's bad. That's exactly what Arizona State and Stanford did to make it so close. That's similar to Stanford. Cover 1. That's similar to Arizona State. I mean, Washington is due. I guess I'll give Caleb Williams some love. It looks like he's back on track the last 2 games, no matter what the results are on the scoreboard. He has 8 big-time throws and only 2 turnover-worthy plays in the last 2 games. So at least, I don't know what he's playing for, right? But at least that's there. So USC's going to win.
It's a huge, and you're playing undefeated Washington.
Yeah.
So I think that he might be more willing to use his legs. By the way, speaking of red zone and methodical drives, USC should be able to run at will.
Yeah.
Like Lloyd should have average 7 yards a carry here.
Which means we should be taking the under, but yeah.
I'm not taking, no.
No, we're not.
I'm not taking USC and a USC under. I'm already tortured enough, but I don't mind the under. You have to have everything go right to get over 78, but no thanks.
Hey, anybody?
Cal USC was 50-49.
Somebody call in with a single game parlay on USC in the under, and if it cashes, I mean that's got to be worth some merch, right? I mean, come on, who
yes.
is? Whew.
Send that over. We'll get you some merch if you call into the voicemail. Yeah. So all right, we're both on USC. What could possibly go wrong? But it should be a fun one. Both those games at night are going to be really fun to watch.